24th April is not an ordinary day. It is a day when the shackles that tied us to the colonial yoke was broken. The Gambia and the Gambian people attained their right to sovereignty. On that day, no single Gambian leader, no single Gambian citizen owed any allegiance, obedience, or adherence to any foreign power or state. This is why this day should be commemorated, because it is the day that each of us became free. Each Gambian became an owner of power. And that is what is freedom: to have equal power and right with everybody else in our homeland. But do we really feel it? Do we feel powerful? Do we feel free? That's what 24th April 1970 means. As we commemorate this day without any state celebration or fanfare, each individual Gambian, or severally, ought to ask this fundamental question: where are we? And how are we to carve a path to a better Gambia? That is why we are having this conversation with you today. By now, each of us should know our place in this nation and the place of our country in Africa, in the world. That is why when this party came into being, in every document that it had, it affirmed: know yourself, know your country, know the world. Then you will become the architects of your own destiny. On the 24th of April 1970, we should have become the architects of our own destiny. Are we the architects of our own destiny? That is the question. We should ask why colonialism had to be gotten rid of. Because it meant economic dependence. It meant industrial stagnation. It meant cultural alienation and the creation of many, many diverse identities that keep us away from each other, create a gulf between Gambian and Gambian, and undermine our unity, our social cohesion. And the purpose of breaking the colonial yoke was to create a Gambian people, a united people. Are we a united people? We are told that we are the owners of the Gambia. 11,256 square kilometers of territory, or even more. For 54 years, the leaders of this country have not made it their primary duty to tell us what we own. We are yet to define our borders. And that's why you still have the shoot to kill practice, because our borders are still undefined. But it is that territory with its land, airscape, and sea that should generate our sovereign national wealth that we own, that we should share in order to have better lives. It is that land where we are told that there are over 500,000 hectares that we can cultivate in order to have food security. Do we have food security? This party has told you and the whole world that it is committed to ensuring that this wealth that comes from our land, our airscape, our sea, will go back to eradicate the poverty of our people. Poverty can be eradicated. But how is it to be eradicated? That is the question that confronts us as a people. We have said that what we inherited from colonialism is a divided country into urban and rural, divided people, rich and poor, where people are compelled to leave the rural area in what is called rural-urban drift to the urban area, and then to drift from the urban area into the diaspora in search of greener pastures. Today, the Mediterranean Sea is a graveyard where innumerable young people now find their home. Unmarked graves at the bottom of the sea. Is this our destiny? That is the question we are here to ask. We are convinced that we can eradicate that dichotomy that plunged the vast majority of our people into the abyss of abject poverty. We are capable of reversing that process. We're saying as a party that we will implement the economic law of balanced and proportionate development of society, where the sovereign wealth of the country on an annual basis will be divided among all the regions. And prior to the division, every village with its development committee would have prepared its budget and feed it into the regional budget, and it will be fed into the national budget. And development will go back to the grassroots automatically, annually. This is the party that is committed to that. And it has unequivocally stated it for every Gambian, every person in the international community to hear and understand. We are the only party with that program. We have emphasized that the land belongs to us. Therefore, we must ensure that the Lands Act that we will enact will enable every Gambian to have as much land as can be put into productive use. That is a right. And to ensure that that happens, we have said that this national wealth, sovereign national wealth, will be put into our central bank, and we will have a cooperative bank designed to eradicate poverty. The world has discovered only two ways of eradicating poverty: consumption-based welfare or production-based welfare. Consumption-based welfare is what you have in many parts of the world that they call social democratic countries, where they tax their companies and provide social services to the people. We are saying, if you take 115 billion and you want to divide it among 207 million, everybody will continue to live in poverty. That cannot be done. We cannot eradicate poverty through consumption-based welfare, that is sharing the little wealth that has been produced. That is why you have a tax-based economy that continues to tax to provide services. We are saying that the state must be productive. But you are being told that the state should not be productive, it should only administer and manage. Then you will continue to be a tax-based economy, and you will never be able to eradicate poverty. We have a solution, but it's a national solution. That is why we are talking to you. This is the conversation, this is the debate. Anybody who comes before you and talk about our backwardness, we must understand that if we are not mature in thinking, if we do not develop awareness, we will continue to be among the least developed countries in the world, uncounted and voiceless. We have emphasized that what we own, the national wealth, must be put in a cooperative bank and provided to the farmers to have seed fertilizer farming implements to use their land, as much land as they could, to produce for us to be self-sufficient in food. It must be put in the hands of small, medium-sized enterprises that aim to process our agricultural produce, to have agro-industrial processing of a minor scale with appropriate technology. And you put many of our young people into work. Some would want to be in services, distribution, trade, and other services. And they can still benefit from the cooperative bank wealth that we all own to be productive. It's a different form of welfare. It's not handouts. It's enabling people to be productive. That is how we can claim our ownership of our country. That is what the Republic is demanding. We have emphasized from that sovereign national wealth that we increase. We will create universal education, free health, housing, water, electricity, infrastructural development. And we can save our young people from alienation. How? This party has emphasized that the young people are the young people of this nation. It is the country that must protect them. It is the country that must ensure their development. That is precisely the reason why we said there will be a national service. Every young person completing school will be part of that national service, where the country will maintain you and you are given all the opportunity for any form of training that you desire for a whole year. And after that, you will have the possibility of receiving support from a cooperative bank or to go into employment in any sector of the economy. That is how our sovereignty can be guaranteed. We have emphasized that for the private sector, there will be a part of an investment portfolio of the central bank, where funds will be given to those engaged in private sector production who respect the duty of corporate responsibility, where national interests prevail over profits. They will be given support to produce, generate employment, and also private-public partnerships so that we can sell our goods outside of this country and services and bring in wealth that will be shared between the private sector and the public sector to build up sovereign national wealth. This is how we can guarantee a developed Gambia. As we commemorate this day, each of us has a responsibility to ask the fundamental question: are we committed to those ideas that can enable us to free our population from poverty and unite our country? We have emphasized, and we are heard by everybody, that this party is going to adhere to the law of the withering of the coercive instrument of the state. That is the only way to consolidate democracy and human rights. As long as the coercive instrument of the state exists, democracy and human rights are inconceivable. It is this uncharted territory that we have identified that is going to consolidate democracy and human rights. That machinery that is now an instrument of protection, instrument of coercion, will be transformed into an instrument of protection. The police, the army, the security apparatus. They will be transformed into a working force and a protection force of our liberty and property. Taking all these promises made by Doi into consideration, that is why we are saying that this is a party tempered to protect the sovereignty of our motherland. And as we move into a new period, a period where we are talking about system change, is a new period. There is need for a transition in mindset and openness in debate among us to look at the type of leadership we need to be able to move forward. And in coming to the conclusion, it is important for all of you to bear in mind that there is a leadership with a mission and vision whose objective is to create a freer, fairer, and better Gambia. But you will also find political leadership imbued with the desire for position. Such leadership is only after that position, that place, where they will be able to reap maximum benefit for self and not for people. So each of us must ask ourselves the fundamental question: what type of leadership for a new Gambia? Is it a leadership which is self-perpetuating, self-seeking, or a leadership that is ready for self-abnegation in order to use our sovereign national wealth for our general benefit? We are concluding by emphasizing that if we want a new Gambia, and that new Gambia to have a place in Africa and the world, we must ensure that we have the right mentality, the right mindset that will enable us to live together as one people and to select our leaders on the basis of informed choice. We have told you, and we are emphasizing again, the reason why Africa is where it is because we have failed to embrace the respect for the sovereignty of the Republic and the sovereignty of the people, leading to many coup d'etats building up. We must reverse that process. The reason why you have the war in Ukraine, war in Israel and Hamas, Ukraine and Russia, and the crisis in the Supreme Council of the United Nations is because of still that void in respecting the rights of the sovereignty of republics and the right of the sovereignty of the people. So Toy is saying, in Gambia, in Africa, in the world as a whole, we must all work to defend the right of the sovereignty of republics and the right of the sovereignty of people and the right to utilize their own sovereign wealth for their collective development, to ensure a freer, fairer, and more prosperous Gambia and world. Thank you very much.
What's important is that why do we celebrate? And the other question is, are we really sovereign? And if yes, why? And if not, why not? So I'm going to open the floor for questions, but I will appreciate that if you strictly address your questions to these fundamental themes that he has been dealing with in his presentation. It is very important. It is only after we feel that we have exhaustively dealt with the theme of these press conferences that I will ask questions on other matters. I think I'm heard. So the floor is open. When you want to speak, introduce yourself and the media house you are representing.
Thank you very much. My name is Isaac Taylor from Gynaco Online News. Thank you for convening this press conference. So my question, you highlight the concern, if you could put it as such, with regards to no fanfare, if I use the words that you used. So my question is, what have you done? For example, have you engaged other parties or the government or civil society to make sure that it is that fanfare or that such a day is recognized? If not, do you have plans to do so? Are you engaged in Tango, the party committee who is very close to your heart, if I could say, and the other stakeholders for this fanfare to eventually be, we've lost one this year, right? So my question
is a very important question as well as a proposal of building up a national conversation on such matters. We are convinced that that is really what is necessary at the moment, is to ensure that all of us as Gambians, irrespective of our affiliation, we know what matters Gambia matters to all of us. And its sovereignty matters to all of us. And the sovereignty of our people matters to all of us. I am sure that as we move forward, not only do I want to say that we have done this for over 5 decades of pushing the state, promoting advocacy for the commemoration of this day as the real day for the liberation of our country, because that's when we attain sovereignty. We've written about it. We have shown the 1965 Constitution, which was a constitutional monarchy where the Queen of England was still the executive of this land, put in the 1965 Constitution. We've done all that is necessary to raise awareness. But the rest assured that it is always the government that takes the move of declaring national days, because funds have to be raised. And as far as the Constitution is concerned, you cannot go and introduce any bill or any matter which imply that funds will be utilized without the executive taking the lead. So I must emphasize to you that in such a matter, it's the executive that must take the lead. And obviously, if we were close to that executive, either being in charge or as we had been part of a coalition that worked, this day would have been commemorated as the day of the genuine liberation of the country. To add to what I may wish to say, we really need to affirm that sovereignty by ensuring awareness from early childhood all the way to adulthood. We, I'm sure you will see our documents, have been recommending that there should be citizenship education at all levels. So in actual fact, if we want genuine democracy to be consolidated, we should ensure that the Constitution, the electoral laws, are found in all libraries of schools. The manifestos of political parties and their constitutions are found in all libraries of schools, so that people independently can go and do their research. We will be advocating for it, and we can all work together. Since you've mentioned it, let's all work together and advocate for it, so that people will not see that this is a party doing a particular thing. It is a nation rising up to affirm its sovereignty and its identity. Like they were.
Yes, correct.
Well,
we've seen the statements that have come out when the current president met Jemima.
yeah. Well, essentially, we take Africa to be the homeland of the African people, divided by virtue of our historical experience. But we have seen Europe trying to unite with the European Union. So Africa had tried to unite, but we have not gone as far as even the European Union has gone. And we can go even further. So there is no doubt that we should move in that direction by virtue of the fact that the resources of Africa should be put in a way that it will help Africa to develop. How? The World Bank is there, the IMF is there. How did they come into being? After the Second World War, Europe was devastated. America knew that it did not have the wherewithal to give aid to each European country to be reconstructed. So they created the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, an international bank. But its objective was to enable Europe to reconstruct. And they knew that Europe will have the wealth because most of those European countries own colonies, and the wealth could easily be plowed back into Europe. So they agreed that they will come up with a European recovery program which will put agricultural development, industrialization, energy, all those sectors to be invested in to facilitate their quick development in order to ensure employment of their population. And they also talked about inter-European trade. And the machinery they created was the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, where people will deposit money, you go and get loans to invest. And then the IMF, because their trade was imbalanced, in order to balance the trade, they created the IMF so that the IMF would also give you loan to be able to buy. So you have money to invest and money also to buy. Then trade will continue. So if you look at those institutions now, when they deal with Africa, that's not their function. The function they had when they came into it and the function they have now are not the same. So we ought to see Kuwait, see Saudi, see Emirates. All these countries have their funds. And they come and give us, look at the OIC. The funds are coming from where? You know. So what stops Nigeria with all its oil? What does Saudi Arabia have other than oil? We have all the oil in the world. What stops us from creating such funds and create an African Central Bank, an African Investment Bank, an African Monetary Fund for the purpose of development of the country? Yes, that is our trajectory. Our trajectory is that we can build something bigger that will help the continent to be able to develop. And if we have many governments with that same thinking, we'll move faster in that direction for the benefit of our continent. But again, we must give power to our people. Without the people taking control and selecting the type of leaders, that program will not be sustainable. So if we want a sustainable process, we must start with the people. And with the awareness of the people, putting the right governments in office, they can collaborate to serve the interests of the people. That is the direction. But I'm sure you know that when the crisis in Senegal really built up, we did send a letter to the head of state of Senegal and the opposition parties. I'm sure people have read it. So we've not just been sitting down, we've been doing something. And even in terms of their current situation, well, we will do whatever we can to send ideas. But they are a sovereign nation, what they do with ideas, nobody can determine. And we hope that in the current climate, where there is goodwill, they will be able to capitalize on the goodwill to build a country that will help Africa to be united.
If I can just piggyback on my last question, is there have been
It may not necessarily be your last question.
yes, it may, I have more. But I want to give my colleagues a chance, I don't want to hog it. There have been many, in fact the reason why I raised that question is there have been many people who have compared your party, PDOIS, to PASTEF. There have been many comparisons with similarities between, they use the same words of sovereignty, which is one of their integral messages, and the issue of the resources, sovereign national wealth, and all of that. And you mentioned if many countries or African leaders have that same ideology just now. So my question is kind of a double-barreled question, okay? And I'll try to make this a very clear one for you. Is one, what do you say to those who draw similarities between your party, PDOIS, and PASTEF? And do you believe that this current administration in Senegal, that's the PASTEF or whatever you may call it, is one of those, has beliefs in what you're saying, like has that mentality that you are just mentioning?
Well, as you have rightly said, it will be very difficult for us to answer questions that are direct because of the sovereignty that they have to be who they are. You know, we should not pollute that in any way, that they sat down, thought about an agenda, work on the agenda, and reach where they have reached. So we leave them with that it is their work, their sovereign task. Similarities, we all know that we are all influencing each other because ideas abound, and especially we are all neighbors. What they have taken, what they have given, no one really knows. But we all know that we learned information from so many sources. You hear people talk about Nkrumah, people talk about so ideas are owned by anybody who takes ownership of it. That is the reality. But Gambians should not lose sight of one fact, that the type of change that occurred in Senegal somewhat occurred here in a different form. Because 2016, all of you should remember, which party could have really taken over from Gambia at that time? And which individual in the Gambia in 2016 could stand and say, if everybody supported me, I will take over the Gambia? Well, that was not the case. Remember that even the UDP leader was in prison. And the political parties that existed, not a single one of them could say, this is the individual we should follow to effect the change. So change is about strategies and tactics. So in Gambia, the tactics and the strategy became different, but we achieved the same task of removing, in fact, somebody who was much stronger and much more determined to stay in power than a situation in Senegal where the leader, in fact, was not an incumbent. So you can see then what we did in the Gambia, if we really evaluate it properly, was something that we could draw lessons from, that people are in control and they can effect change whenever they so desire. But then what do they do after they change? And if we were to advise our colleagues in Senegal, we'll tell them our experience. Here before, the former president handed over to President Barrow, we recommended the creation of an expert bank. And the proposal that was made was going to make Gambia very unique in transition. Because what was proposed was to create a core of 7 covering all the key areas, health, education, international relations, etc. You have 7 core people with experience and professional capacity to be able to create that expert bank, to look at all the ministries and ask all Gambians to send their curriculum vitae. And when they send their curriculum vitae, you will be able to see which areas of expertise they have. Then you put them together to work in that area, to look at, and we wanted a handing over where the former ministers will hand over their papers to that committee, and the experts will be given those handing over notes are, so that they will be able to study the strategic plans, etc., project, where they stop, everything will be studied, and then they will be making proposals as to what a new minister could do in that particular ministry to be able to facilitate development. So you see, with that you would have had a smooth transition of administration. Because prior to President Barrow coming, what was told to the person who was Secretary General to tell all the permanent secretaries is that all the documents must be preserved and they must be ready to be able to present their strategic plan, program, etc., to a committee. So you see, when you start with that, then you know what exists and you can plan short, medium, long term as to what should happen next. So there is absolutely no doubt that change requires knowledge, and if you have the knowledge base, it can be a smooth change and it can lead to faster development. I have not seen their program yet or how they intend to carry on their transition, but these ideas will be shared with them, and based on their current realities, one will see what will be relevant to them. But information sharing is necessary at this stage.
However, I think there is a need for it. It is absolutely important that we take seriously what has been said here. And if we are really committed Gambians, each of us should take each of these ideas and still weigh it further for dissemination. Any more questions? Wonderful. Which means that the presentation has been done so efficiently and effectively that it has answered all your questions. You have no questions because the